And here we are on yet another trail. This one is called Ancient Hammock Trail in the park. Just to get you a general feel for the real Florida. This is the sort of stuff you would normally see out and about in Florida. And this time I actually came with a camera. I went back to that snake and it wasn't there, unfortunately. Lessons learned, I felt like I was gonna lighten up my load a little bit, and it didn't work out so well. So carry cameras with you folks all the time. It's remarkable that in a place like Florida, seemingly void of elevation change and just general, everybody says, oh, Florida is flat as a pancake, but within just the scope of a couple hundred feet, you go from a swamp to, or not even a couple hundred, just really a couple feet. You get from pine trees to cypress trees to swampy terrain like this. This is a definite wetland signature up here. It's really, really cool. Get such rich diversity in species of trees and vegetation, and really, really cool. But yet, here's a perfect example. You don't see cypress trees in here, but you can see how other trees cope with that type of environment, seasonal flooding or something along those lines. And believe it or not, in places like Alafaya State Park, the trees like this, the saber palms, actually do survive floods, and they're right in the floodplain. Little trees. The downside to Florida ecosystem is the trees here are really not that strong, and you're gonna see a lot of this. It may take them a few dozen years to fall apart, but they do fall apart. Like even a strong tree like this, it's actually a sick tree. This stuff that you see on the bark is actually some sort of fungus. And it's a sort of fungus that eventually kills trees. I have a whole bunch of oaks on my property where I live, and those trees are dying. I chose the property specifically because of the trees, and they're probably not gonna die within my lifetime, but they're definitely going to die. Those massive trees have very short life expectancy, relatively speaking. This is really interesting. This being a palm tree, palm trees actually really don't have a good tree root system. Like if you look at a tree like this, it has roots all over the place. Palm tree actually has like a bulb. Come on, Shu. And what ends up happening is those little rootlets, they grab onto the soil, you know, sand or something like that. A palm tree could pretty much grow in any type of environment, but it's very easy to topple it over. In a lot of parts, I've actually seen palm trees just fall. And in this particular example, you could see different levels of where my guess is at some point, there were different levels of water in the swamp, and more than likely all of this got washed away with the floods, and therefore you see the original, and then another one. But they adapt. They're smart cookies. See, here's a good example. They form a ball and they just sort of anchor themselves like that. Palm trees are actually very interesting species of trees. They can be used for, obviously, firewood. They could be used for construction. As a matter of fact, early settlers, when they came to Florida, used to build fortresses out of them. The downside to the palm trees is they're really not strong on the inside. That's why a lot of them, you're gonna see hollow spots inside. They do float, they do burn. Those things, you throw enough of them on the pile and it will light up like a 4th of July. In case you ever come to a place like this, well, unfortunately in this park, you're forbidden from gathering firewood, but technically if you ever find yourself in Florida in need of a firewood, this stuff up here burns just as well, if not better. It burns really hot too. And so there's different species of palm trees in Florida. You get the sable palm, you get palmetto palms, and a couple of other ones. There's also imported species, like the ones you would normally see around Disney World. But this is wildlife Florida, as far as it gets. Oh, here's a perfect example. See what ends up happening? The palm tree is really easy to fall. And this bulb that you see in there is actually the root system that got ripped out straight out of there. And normally when you look at the palm trees, they are really not, whatchamacallit, like they're not barkless like this. What ends up happening is over time, new stalks develop, which is why you have this interwoven thing. But usually at places like Disney World, they just rip those pieces off, and given enough time, they do fall off on their own. Like you see in this example. And again, because of poor soils in Florida, you see just such a drastic tree decay. Like that tree over there is pretty much dead. Here's a perfect example of a tree going back into the soil, and you could see all sorts of plants adopt themselves and start growing out of them. And it falls apart and becomes one with nature. Oh, here's an interesting specimen coming up. How about that? This is a perfect example of what ends up happening to a lot of those trees. They start decaying on the inside, even though they look healthy, like that oak over there. This is what it looks like inside, and eventually it crumbles, it falls. But that being said, how cool is this? It's really, really cool. It's almost like a little bridge going off. I don't call this ancient hammocks for no reason. See some really big trees up here. Here's another really interesting example. I don't know if camera is picking this up, but see how a tree is sort of twisting all the way from there to here? Well, there's a reason why it's twisting like that. It was trying to find sunlight. The downside to densely planted forest like this is you get trees blocking the sunlight. So trees have to go through all sorts of circuits, just like what you see here with this palm tree, trying to find light. Have all sorts of ferns growing out of them. And this stuff is perfect habitat for all sorts of critters. Another thing is, if you're not familiar with Florida ecosystem, just this little short walk from that tree over there down through here, such a game changer. The humidity level is different, the air feels different, it smells different. So this would be like an upland portion, and behind all those trees there's an actual wet spot over there. No, people get carried away with city life and busy life, but seeing things like that really puts everything into perspective. If you have any retirement goals whatsoever, I advise you to start early and enjoy places like this. And better yet, start when you're young. That way you could actually hike a place like this without keeling over and passing out. On a day like today, I think it's like 88 degrees, but it's really, really wonderful. Lots of shade, even though there's high humidity. Really cool. And what's really interesting about vegetation is it just everything grows out of everything else. This one tree is a home to a vine and some other things that cling onto it. I think this is an aspen. Don't quote me on that. I'm not quite good with the trees. I just like to look at them. And there you have it, folks. Here's another example of this fungus thing. Let me get the camera closer. See those red blotches and white blotches? Well, this is what kills the tree. And upon entrance to this trail, there's actually a sign that's talks about dangers of bringing out of state firewood, and you get all sorts of bugs and everything like that that carry certain type of fungus on them. And if the bug doesn't kill the tree, the fungus certainly does. Wow, look at this. It's a big one. Take pictures with one hand because I'm holding my GoPro in the other hand. There's a big tree. And yet again, if you look at it, it's missing a whole bunch of a tree, which presumably is down that way somewhere. Look at this. I've been seeing a lot of those guys, whatever they are. And lizards. All sorts of lizards. See this guy? Fern grown out of a tree. And that's what you see with a lot of mature trees that are dying. You see all sorts of other vegetation come in. But that being said, that vegetation actually does it good. What it does is it actually traps moisture. So it keeps the tree alive, even though most of it is already dead. Hey there, little guy. Want to say hi for the camera? Look at that. And Florida has just zillions and zillions of all sorts of lizards. And another thing you might notice in Florida is something like this. That is an honest to goodness orange. And there's lots of orange trees that grow in the forest. Either by human carelessness or just natural invasion. Time and again you'd be walking through a place like this and all of a sudden you see a full-fledged orange tree. Gives you nutrition, I know, but definitely doesn't belong here. Oh, I was talking about palm trees. Another thing that people make out of them is they actually build roofs and huts, and out of the leaves, like if you ever go to Caribbean, you see a lot of them, a lot of the roofs with this with the palm leaves. And another thing you're gonna see is people actually weave baskets and things out of the actual palm leaves to store things and all that stuff. And obviously you have coconuts that provide you nutrition and water. And if you harvest palm tree at the right time, you could also eat palm stalks. Heart of palm, I think it's called. Really cool. Just one with the nature. No Mickey Mouse required. And this is a different type of palm. I haven't seen this one before. But look at those cool leaves.